Welcome to Writing the Universal, Why Children's Literature is for Everyone. This interview with author Marti Dumas is the brainchild of Annell López, who is the master curator of so many sessions for words and music, including this one today. Thank you, Annell, for being here. Annell is a Dominican immigrant and a fiction writer who has been published in numerous places. Look for the book to drop. I'm speaking it into existence sometime soon. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Marty, for being here. I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. Hi. My name is Marti Dumas, and I am a mom, a teacher, and a writer from right here in New Orleans, with about 200 years of traceable Louisiana lineage pushing me forward, I guess. And I do mostly write all for children, and mostly middle grade, so then like somewhere in that 10 to 13-year-old range, and a lot of fantasy in the mix. And my latest book is Wild Seed Witch, which is about a 13-year-old girl who just wants to get a YouTube channel off the ground, you know? Like, she's just trying to make it happen. She's got 12 followers. If she can get to 99 by the end of the summer, it's gonna be on, you know? And unfortunately, what happens instead is that she finds out she's a witch, and, you know, her life changes a lot. So I'm super excited to have been invited. This is awesome, and I have no idea what Annell is gonna ask me or like any of those things. So
because I'm not told her a single thing. We'll talk about pretty much everything. I really love the cover of this book, and I love the concept behind this book. I love that I know for a fact that this book has made it into numerous classrooms. There is a charter school network in the city that is teaching this. So this book has made it to the hands of children in New Orleans. Yeah. And I think that we should give it up for Marty. It is not every day that a person writes a book, publishes a book, and then the children from her city tend to, are the ones reading that book, studying that book in a classroom. Teachers are like, making lesson plans from the book that she wrote. And I think that as much as publishing can be an accomplishment, having a book in a classroom just feels like something. I mean, you tell me how it feels.
No, it's the whole point. Like, it's the goal. You're like, yes, I'm winning. Because I am a teacher at heart. Like, there's no way that, like, I accidentally say all the time still, oh, I'm a teacher. And then I'm, actually right now, I mostly write children's books. I'm mostly an author technically, but my heart is a teacher's heart, and my zeal for children's literature was just like totally bolstered in trying to build my classroom library, because people, including kids, need books that they can connect to in the moment. And wherever you are, like, you don't know exactly what a kid is going to need to connect to in that moment. So like, you can't judge it from the outside. You just have to have like a lot of different things available so that the kids can make their own connection points. And that's huge for me. That's big.
I mean, I can imagine. I feel like I'm not speaking for everyone when I say that. Any of us who write, which are, I think all of us in this room, it would be a dream to have your work be in a classroom. Absolutely. And to have someone who is preparing questions and assignments and leading discussions for an extended period of time based on something that you wrote. What an accomplishment. So let's talk about the inspiration for this book before we dive into children's literature in general, and you as a teacher and you as an author, and what a wonderful combination that is. So where does Wild Seed Witch come from?
Okay, so this is my 11th book for children. A couple of things came together, right? One is that I always have a very particular child in mind, like a literal child, which is like one of the advantages of having been a classroom teacher, because I know a lot of kids. They're old now, y'all. They're getting old. They still call themselves my kids, but they're getting old. So, but I have a very particular young human in mind who needed a thing, and it's their need for the story that makes the beginning of the story happen. But you can't literally take it's a room full of writers. Y'all know, you can't literally take a whole human and fold them up and put them on a page. So that's not a thing. You have to like flatten some parts, but like borrow pieces from other people. Like you have to put cobble a thing together. And so part of it is that inspiration from a real human who I know needed the story. And then also part of it ends up coming from you, right? Like as a writer, like what do you need to get out on the page at the time? And I was realizing that I had published quite a number of books for children, all of whom feature children of color. In my stories, race will never be the conflict point in the story. Now, that's not to say that stories where race is the conflict point are not a thing, right? Like we need those stories too, because it's true, it's real, it's life, it's history, it's current, it's all those things. But like, as a classroom teacher, I had a hard time finding books where that wasn't the cornerstone of the thing. And so then I'm like, okay, I'm adding to the landscape. I can add the things that I see need to be added. And so then that's a thing for me. But what I had never put in any of my books was a story in which the children did not have a two-parent nuclear family. And ironically, I did not have a two-parent nuclear family. So I was like, how have I never written about like the pull and push, the tension of this split, like your parents being split in this way. And so then those two things came together to form the core of the main character in this story, who is Hassani. She's amazing. I love her. She's so human. She's so human. She messes up all the time in like very, very human ways. And I think that's cool. But also, for me, I started off at the beginning saying that my family is mostly from Louisiana, and we can trace it back a long while. My father's family is from a town called Vacherie, and which like still to this day grows a lot of sugar cane. There's still a lot of cane in Vacherie. And the first time I ever went to Vacherie on my own as an adult person, not like a young person being dragged for somebody's funeral, where I wasn't allowed to attend the funeral either, but had to kind of like sit in a car or play outside with cousins that I couldn't remember who was who, like not that kind, but like when I went on my own to like see what was up. I stepped out of the car and I promise you that I could feel the energy of my ancestors in the ground of that place. Like I was standing outside the Laura plantation of all places, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was profound. Like I could really feel it. And I didn't know when I would use it, but like when you're a creator person and you have that kind of moment, like you know you're gonna use it. You just don't know when or where you're gonna use it, but you know you'll use it eventually. So then that pulled together for this as well. So obviously then the magic has to be centered in Vacherie. There is a magic school, a finishing school, that is hidden in a sugarcane field in Vacherie, not visible to people who are not welcome there.
That's amazing. That's incredible. I love that you began by telling us that you thought of a specific person, specific child. May I ask you if this was a student?
So this time it wasn't a student. I could walk through all of my books and tell you which ones, so, but for this one, it actually was one of my nieces. And my niece is an Instagrammer and a TikTok like a TikTok makeup artist.
Oh,
and
TikToker.
Oh yeah. Okay, thank you. Make it better. Make it better now. Okay, so and
I mean, I don't know actually. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, you're like possibly, right? So, but her mom is also one of the coolest people that I know, and is like super down to earth, really obviously also very smart, and was raised in the kind of feminism that I was raised in, where like there was like a way where you were like kind of like looking down on the makeup. Like that's not an art, like that's you trying to like get in with the man, and like it's like, you know, whatever, but like, yo, that's not it. Like it's this whole own art form. And so then watching my sister-in-law like working through her thing and me being like, actually no, we're wrong. Like we are wrong. Let that child have her art. We are the ones who are like trying to keep her from herself. Like she is not doing this because she thinks that she is less, or she's doing this because this is her way of making art, whatever. Okay, so in working through that, I was like, this is something also that needs to come together in the thing. So mostly it would be my niece this time.
Does she know?
She does, but she's mad chill. So, like, it's very like, it's cool, sorry. I mean, and also, it's, to be fair, again, it's really hard to fold a person into a story. So it is inspired.
Right.
She spawned it, but like, it's not literally her. I do have a story that has one of my children in it, literally and exactly. Jayla and the Wolves, it's not it's the first book that I ever wrote that got published, but was not the first book of mine that got published. Okay, so that one is literally my 6-year-old, literally and exactly on the page, but everybody else is a little conglomeration of that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do love the starting point that you thought of a person who's like very specific. I think that when we are writing, we talk a lot about how the specific is what makes it universal. And that's how we connect. Like, the more you try to be generic, like, that's not how you get to connect with people. So I do want to talk about why children's books are just for everyone, and even children's movies. Because I feel like, I mean, who doesn't watch, I guess if you have children, like, you have to. I don't have children, but I do. Okay, I'm not gonna say that I pity those of you who do.
I mean, you can. It's cool.
I mean, I don't, but I do know from observing others that they sometimes have to watch the same movies, listen to the same songs, watch the same movies, the same TV shows, and be exposed to the same children's media like over and over and over. But I do think that even for people who don't have children, like, we do gravitate to certain stories that are meant for younger readers. And like, certain things about children's, literature, it's meant to be universal, as we wish with any sort of literature. But in your opinion, what is it that you think makes, I guess, your book not just for your niece or not just for your students, but for all of us?
Right. So that's a giant question. Okay, but I'm gonna jump into it. So
we'll take it into
we'll take little chunks of it. No, it's good. So the first part of that is that good stories are good stories. Whether or not you think this is a good story, that's up to you. But like, a good story is a good story. I read The Secret of NIMH, or rather Miss Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH, as an adult person for the first time, and it was a good story. Same thing for The Hobbit, which I had somehow skipped as a child. A good story is a good story. Like, if it's good, it's good. There's that bit. Same thing for picture books, right? Like, when a picture book is a good story, as the parent who is being dragged to read this thing over and over again, you can, you're like, at least this one is good on the 73rd time. Like, it's still a good piece. So there's that. And there are elements of humanity in good stories, and they have different uses, each kind of story. So someone who is writing short stories is not a person who's not good enough to write a novel. Like, a short story is...
Thank you for that.
Oh, you're... Okay. But like, I'm just speaking truth. I'm here speaking truth. So it's
you say that again.
Right? Yeah, no. And I will say, I am horrible at short stories because I am long-winded. So for me to write a novel is my natural length, right? It's my natural, like, it's my speaking voice, right? But also, as an artist, you should practice other forms. So like, I'm, practicing other things, whatever, it's fine. But okay, so then there's that bit of it. But then also, Sandra Cisneros has this vignette in The House on Mango Street called 11. And in it, she has the best metaphor that ever happens, which is, she says, I'm gonna get it partially wrong, but I'm gonna get it so close, y'all. I'm gonna be so close. She says, being 11 is like pennies in a box, like those little nesting dolls, one inside the other. When you're 10, you're also 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5. You're all of those things in you at one time. And I think that when people feel that they can't access that part of themselves anymore, that we should maybe have therapy involved, because you should be able to keep going back in there. If there's a painful thing that's blocking you, that's something that, I'm not qualified, don't bring it here, but like, with your therapist, like, you'll sit down and you'll talk about like why that is a little blockade for you or whatever, and to be able to go back and access that. I understand not being driven to necessarily write for that age group, because maybe it's not your jam, you gotta follow your heart or whatever, but I read widely, and people who read widely usually read all kinds of things, so.
That's fantastic. I really want to sit with that quote, because You are right. A person who is 10 is 9 and 8 and everything below. And those of us who are however old we are what we are now and what we were the previous year and the year before and all of that. We do carry all of those years with us. And that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, the House of Mango Street is just, it's for all of us.
It's all of us.
It's not just for children.
Yeah.
Do you think about adults as you are writing these characters?
Absolutely. I'm like a human and I'm like sitting right there, right? So then like I absolutely have to do that. In my first stories, I was, because so as a character in a traditionally shaped story, right? Because obviously we can break form. We can do whatever we like, right? But as a character in a traditionally shaped story, as the main character, you are going to have some kind of movement, right? It's going to be like an emotional growth. It's going to be a personal growth. You're going to like learn, like something is going to happen that's going to make you different at the end than you were at the beginning of the story. And for the best stories, you need to have had some agency in making that happen by the end, right? Like if it's just handed to you, then it's probably the person who handed it to you's story,
Right.
not your story, right? So then it has to be you. And so then an easy way to get around that so that kids can have agency is to kill off the parents. But like I'm a parent and I'm sitting right here, right in this story. So like I won't kill them off. Like I just won't. Like they're just, maybe I will eventually. I don't want to say that. But like for now, right? Like I won't kill them off because there are ways that our kids are having agency taken from them and that we had agency taken from us as a kid that is inappropriate. And so then I try to find the places where they can have agency and like drive their own story forward without killing the adults around. But then that leaves the adults to be able to be their own kinds of humans. So I'm definitely thinking about the adults that are in the kids' lives, and I'm also thinking about how the kids are viewing the adults, but then I'm also thinking about, at the same time, how the adults are looking at the children in this situation, how they're reflecting, like one could be this one, but in 20 years. And so then you're getting that kaleidoscope / amplification happening all at one time when you're looking at the character. So yes, no, I definitely think about the big people. We're good.
You said something really interesting and also very profound, that it's also very universal. Like stories do need to have movement, and a goal and somewhere where, or something that a character is like striving for. But it seems like the concept of agency is just a little more intense when it comes to children, right? Because we do things for them,
or to them, or don't like take it from them intentionally. Yeah.
Right. And so we seem to be, in charge of that agency. How important was that for you as you were writing?
Extremely, right? And again, any writer who tells you they're not trying to work out their life on the page is lying to you. Just like heads up, they're lying. They're saving face, which might involve a small lie, and that's okay. So definitely that's a huge bit for me, but also in terms of like aspirational adulting, right? And thinking about like, ideally, how would this go if I were the adult in this situation? What is ideal? And then from that, what is actually humanly possible? Because all of us, even if you are not a person who chose to have children, you probably end up accidentally, even sometimes, interacting with young people. And so then having that sort of in your back pocket, I think is a useful thing.
Besides wanting to create stories that do have characters, have their own agency, which in turn do impact students who are reading this and kids in general, in terms of affirming their own agency. What other big concepts were you thinking about?
Okay.
Or do you often think about? Or maybe let's just narrow it down to this one book.
Okay, I was like, because this is
another giant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this book, I was thinking this is gonna be like, but we're not gonna have like a giant kid audience, and I'm talking to a bunch of other writers, so we're cool. Okay, so in this book, it is fun. Before I say this, I have to say that the book is fun, y'all. There's jokes, the girls are amazing, there's magic, there are kittens, like there's stuff is happening in the book. It's great. Okay. However, one of the big drivers for me in this series is the idea of being afraid of your own greatness. and being powerful in a way that actually makes you afraid. And when she starts off, she is inept. She has to be. Like, she is from a family that hasn't had any magic in however long. Nobody's spoken to her about any of this. Like, this, they don't know, right? Like, right? But everybody else at the place that she goes is from, like, they all know, right? And they've sort of been able to see magic happening their entire lives, whereas she's not. Like, she's not surrounded by people who can do magic, and so then she's not been able to see those kinds of things. But the reason she gets swept into the organization that she's swept into is because she puts out a really powerful display. And these women see this display and they're like, oh no, you can't leave this one out unrefined. You can't leave this one out being wild. We've got to come in and polish her. And so then her introduction to her power is people trying to curtail it. And over the course of the series, she'll come into her own. Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, so a series.
It is a series. They wrote it on the side of the book. They're gonna maybe regret that at some point, but for right now, yeah. The second one of this, the second book, which is Wild Seed Witch, they still use the title as the series title. Charmed Life is the second book, and that one comes out on May 2nd. If that's a Tuesday, it's May 2nd, 2023.
Oh, yay! 2023. That's a release. That's fast. That's amazing.
It's true. Yeah, no, I was writing. I was writing. Yeah.
You were writing. Congratulations. That's great. Wow. That's amazing.
Okay, sweet,
Yeah.
excellent, yay.
Yeah, tell me about, so we know, you said something really interesting about how any adult is working their own traumas through their writing, or I guess writers are. How much of aside from your own personal experiences as once a child, now an adult, how much of your experiences as a parent and as a teacher do you think have worked its way into this book specifically?
Into this book specifically? So, as a Black woman, I am often still, because I just give off that vibe of like, she don't know what she's doing. She needs help, y'all. And I'm fine with that. I will take all the help. Any help anybody wants to give me, come. Like, I got it. I'll take it. But is this sort of like public refinement that needs to happen. There's a cultural polishing that is a part of being a Black girl in America, that when people rebel against it, they get really thrown under the bus. And that bit is a little bit tough, right? And being a quirky person my whole life who didn't have that much interest in social polishing, a lot of that ends up making its way into this book. That's what, when people have excitedly said to me, like, oh yay, it's like we got a Black Hogwarts, and I'm like, well, yeah, no, that's not this one. Danielle Clayton just wrote us a Black Hogwarts. Like that, her book series, The Marvelers, is amazing. If you haven't read it, if you want like full on, this is an entire world of magical people that you never knew about in the sky and all that, like that's Danielle Clayton's The Marvelers. This one happens entirely between New Orleans and Vacherie. Happens right here. It could be happening right now. And it is more like if AKAs had magic. And we're running a charm school for girls. Like this is more that. Like that Hogwarts. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
In terms of your work and I know that you've talked about, or briefly you told me earlier, you were doing sometimes some literacy consulting,
Yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
How much of like your own background in terms of teaching literacy to children were you thinking about as you were writing this?
Every book, all the time, because it's like a part of my core identity, right? So then,
do you envision a lesson plan?
I don't think in terms of lesson plans, because I actually think that lesson plans go with kids and not the other way around. So then for me no, I don't think in terms of lesson plans, but I think in terms of people and in terms of conversation. So I love legitimately talking about books with people, including young people, right? And I do imagine the kinds of conversations that we might have. So, but then that's me imagining specific kids into a scenario, but specific kids, as special as anyone is. I always say this about my own children, right? Like as special as they are, and they are so special. They're lovely, right? they're not that special. There's like at least 1,000 other ones that are exactly like them, but with slightly different names that like live in Wisconsin or like New Jersey or something like that. They have their matches out there. So like if I'm thinking about those specific kids, I know that if I could have that conversation with one kid, that I would be able to have it with like a bunch of different kids. Does that even answer your question? I think I got off.
I know, I think you answered it.
Okay, all right.
Have you gotten a chance to get like real reactions from kids around the city from this book?
So I have.
What has that been like?
It's amazing. I absolutely love it. So one of my goals, okay, so there are a lot, people love New Orleans.
They do.
I mean, true story, some people hate New Orleans, but people love New Orleans, right? And it has like a little, it has a vibe, it has a magic feel, right? So people who are not from New Orleans, well, if you come here and you feel like I have to stay, then we count you as from New Orleans. You're good, you're here, you're done. All right, okay, you're from New Orleans, that's good. But if you are visiting New Orleans, I'll say, right, and have no intention of staying, but you feel the magic, a lot of times people will then want to take that and like put that into their stories because they felt a little bit of magic, and that's cool, right? Except that is never New Orleans. Like, it's never New Orleans. It's I don't know what it is. I remember my kids reading, y'all know the Jack and Annie books, the Magic Tree House books? Okay, all right, okay, because they're ubiquitous, but okay. So there is a Magic Tree House book that happens in New Orleans, and my kids were hyped because they were Mary Pope Osborne's fans. Like, they were like in it, they were like so excited about it, and they read this book and they were so disappointed because they got like so many little things wrong, and it's understandable. Like, it's hard to do, right? But the part that actually made them upset was they were like, the thing is that she's really famous, so people are gonna think she's right, not that we're right. They're gonna think that's really how we live. And I was like, I get that. So part of me is wanting to like #normalize New Orleans, y'all. Like, this is like where we are, this is how we live, like this is really a thing, it's a real place, and it does have a magic feel to it. I can feel it, but it is maybe a different kind than people have. So one of my goals is to normalize New Orleans and New Orleans kids and like have them be able to be themselves. I didn't know anything about the New Jersey Turnpike or any of those things, but I gobbled up those Babysitters Club books. I did, right? But that was like a little window into that world. And the same thing here, that people will be able to have that. So what my huge goal, and it's not 100% in this book yet, but my huge goal is for New Orleans kids to be able to read the dialogue from one of the main characters in my book and not have to change their voice. Like, just read it straight and be like, oh snap, that was me. Yes, baby, it was you right on the page. It was like you, and it was accurate right on the page. So there's that. However, back to your main question, which is, have I had reactions from kids in New Orleans? And I have. They love the drama. They absolutely love the drama of the story. But my favorite story about this is I was doing an event at KIPP with this book last year. But before that, I had to go to KIPP to do something different. So I was not there for this event. I think they had just gotten the book. It did not occur to me that they would have like Googled to know what my face looked like, right? Okay, okay. So I'm there waiting to go into the cafeteria for the event. The kids are lining up in the cafeteria, 8th graders, right, coming out. They are not supposed to talk in the hallway. I don't know why y'all do that. They're not supposed to talk in the hallway. And I hear teachers reminding them.
I was going to fall for that. I was going to answer that question.
I hear teachers reminding them not to talk in the hallway, not to talk in the hallway. Okay, as they're coming out of the cafeteria, fine. So they're lined up. And then they're standing there. This like cool, just cool as you please. All these like little boys and little girls, they stand, they got their hands in their pocket, they're mad chill. And like then one of them looks over at me and says, I love your book. And the next one says, your book cool? Yeah, it's cool. And they just keep going down the line, and I was like, my heart, like absolutely. Oh my gosh, it's like amazing because yeah, like yes. So yes is the answer to that. I have gotten to talk to kids here in New Orleans, but like, it is New Orleans, but it's like so specific that again, it makes it universal. Like it's a place, right? And so you learn a little bit about the place, but the story is about people, and people are all over the place.
Thank you. I will not answer that question.
It was rhetorical.
I do happen to work for that network. That's all I can say about that. Yeah. So, how important was it for you to well, I guess I do know how important it was. Do all of your books take place in New Orleans?
So all of my books have at least a touch point in New Orleans, right? All of them take place in New Orleans except one, which takes place in the ocean. So then, that was hard. Like, it would be hard to make a New Orleans ocean. That wasn't, yes. But touch point, they began in New Orleans. Again, that's a part of my thing. This is my normal. There's zero, I know why New York is the normal place, or Ohio, because not Ohio is not, but people are will be from, they think of it as like a generic, which it's not, right? But they think of it as like a generic central place. Or New York, because like most of publishing is based in New York, not just New York and Manhattan, not just Manhattan in Midtown. Manhattan, it's like very, very, very specifically placed. And so then it makes it easier to pitch stories that are universal, but like from like those kinds of areas. And I'm just like, we have regular things. Every day is not Voodoo Fest here in New Orleans. Like, we also have other days besides those. For sure, Mardi Gras is not just a Tuesday here. The first time I was away from home, away, on Mardi Gras Day, I cried because I was like, that's what they mean when they say everywhere else is just Tuesday. Just go to class, like nobody even cares. There's no music, there's nothing. It was emotionally disturbing for me, but I grew up. I had it fixed. But so they all have a touch point in New Orleans. It's not for any of the stories a cornerstone of the story. Even in this one, it's not. It doesn't have to be. It could have been somewhere else, but it is because #normalize New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that, you've touched upon something really important. It's that it is a very hard setting to write. It's like you're fighting with so many misconceptions.
Yeah.
And also you're fighting with an image of like people that don't understand it. It's a very intricate city. I don't write about New Orleans or things that do take place in New Orleans because I do feel, much like you, the goal to normalize the place that I write about, which happens to be Newark, New Jersey, which not as interesting as New Orleans.
No, of course it is. Don't say that. Hold on, no, wait, we gotta stop here. Don't say that.
No,
Wherever you're from is totally interesting.
No, it is interesting.
It has a magic and
New Orleans takes a cake. I would not even fight with that. I think that, other settings are different. You're right, in some other places. Everywhere has its own charm. But I think that, what makes New Orleans is not what makes Newark.
For sure.
But I do understand the desire to normalize a place.
Yeah.
That it's almost like mythical in some ways.
Yeah.
Or completely just, misunderstood in others. So I commend you for tackling, that very hard aspect of setting, because it is hard to write. I know a lot of people who, sometimes want to write a setting that is truthful and would end up creating a fictional setting because, there's that fear of like, oh, who's going to correct me on this one thing that I didn't get right? Who's going to say this one thing? People don't do things this way. So that's a hard task.
It is.
For sure. But you're happy with your results?
I like this book a lot. I like all of them, honestly. The thing that you were saying about place, right? And just really made me think about people, and a lot of times people who are not people of color, or who do not identify as people of color, will say things to me like, I don't really have any culture. That statement is false, right? Like that is not true, right? That's just 100%, it's not true. And it becomes a part of this like interesting normalization that makes it invisible, right? And I'm just trying to break that up because everybody has culture, and like truly, I'm missing out on some cool stuff every time a person is like, I don't know, my name's just regular. I just is like, no, not to me. Like you're just telling me you don't want to tell me the story of it, which just seems lazy. Like don't do that. Like get in there a little bit. So I think that about obviously I too travel and am inspired by places, and I would never be like, well, I would never write about any place other than New Orleans because it hasn't even happened, right? Like I also write about other places, but don't suck the magic out of the place that you're in. Find it. Like go dig for it. Like dig for it, and you be the one to pull it up, because no one else could put it on the page the way that you would be able to put it on the page. Right. And that's a window that I probably want to look through.
Right, there's a lot of personal interpretation to setting, right? And
Yeah.
to the own lived experiences of people. Thank you for that. So, tell us a little bit about the sequel, but not too much. Because we're gonna buy it in May.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm gonna hold you to it, so I'm gonna wait for your little picture holding up the book, being like, I got it.
You will see it. You will see it.
Hilarity. Okay, so Hassani at the end of this book is finished. Like, but actually, way before the end of the book, they don't spend the entire book at this finishing school. Like, they get launched out into the world. They're basically legal witches. Like, you know, they're like they're of the age of legality in the witch world, which, again, Hassani had no idea existed, but it exists in New Orleans. Not adjacent to, it exists here and everywhere else, but she's here. So in the second book, we get to see the hidden spaces and how they're hidden in plain sight here in the city. And Hassani gets a few more lessons about friendship and power. In the last book, she did some things that hurt other people unintentionally, like she wasn't meaning to. And so in this book, the second book, she overcorrects a little bit and is doing a little more mother henning than maybe she should be doing to try to like compensate for that. And so then as that piece, she and her father have an unstable peace. We actually don't visit it at all in the second book, and we get to see her develop her relationship with her stepmother.
That's really nice. I see what you're saying now about, you know, nuclear families and writing outside of that. It's it's big.
No, it's big.
Absolutely, yeah. So we talked a little about short stories and, you know, longer forms of work. You describe yourself as long-winded.
Have I not proven it true?
Tell us a little bit about why children's literature, as opposed to maybe books that are, I mean, again, they are for everyone, but maybe classified specifically for older readers.
For older readers, yeah. Okay,
How do we end up here?
part of it is my see a need, feel a need personality type, right? So then that's part of it. But part of it also is that, like, I became a reader as a child. Like, I was like that. So then for me, there is already a comfort and a magic and like an escapism in just trying to recapture that moment of like me hiding under my grandmother's bed. True story. Hiding under my grandmother's bed because this was the 80s, we did not have central air. And it's New Orleans, it was hot. And my grandmother's room was the only room where the air conditioner was allowed to be on all day.
Of course.
Obviously, right? And so if company was coming, the living room air conditioner would get turned on in time to cool off the front of the house, but no. On a normal day, it was just my grandmother's room. So I would hide under the bed on the far side so that like if somebody just like poked their head in the room, they wouldn't see me hiding under there with books just sticking out enough so that I get light from the ambient light in the room. And it still seems like a magic to me. Like the memory feels like a magic. Like reading Strawberry Girl under there and Anne of Green Gables and Swiss Family Robinson. Y'all, if you haven't reread Swiss Family Robinson, reread that joint. It is wild. It is absolutely wild. You probably don't even remember, right? It's wild. But like just absolutely the feeling of like falling into a real other place, I associate with my younger self. And then being a teacher doesn't hurt.
Right. Right, and seeing the need.
Yeah.
Have you ventured into other forms of fiction that are meant for older readers?
Right. So,
is that something that would interest you?
I mean, probably at some point, maybe not though. I won't commit to it, but I did start off writing things that were meant for adults and young adults when I was like earlier in my journey honing my craft. And so, but it doesn't call to me in the same way, right? Like it doesn't. And also because that see a need, feel a need, I keep seeing the need. I keep seeing the like little gaps in it. And so I suspect that if I saw the same thing for something older that it might pull me in the same way, but it hasn't happened yet.
But you're not gonna rule it out.
No, I wouldn't rule it out. That'd be foolish.
Yeah, I like the idea of definitely going for the thing that is calling you. I do think that as a writer, it's definitely hard to listen to what is calling you, right? And not just like, trial and error a bunch of things until you land where you need to be. Tell us a little bit about the publishing of process or the journey of getting a book like this out, like this, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is. I can say it's beautiful because I didn't do any of this. Like the cover, it's like it's gorgeous. It's really lovely. I'm not in charge, but it's a great job. For this story, every book has like a different thing. I was not interested in being agented until very recently. Just some early experiences, again, long-winded, I won't go through the whole thing, but I was just like, I have a goal. I don't necessarily want or need a gatekeeper to tell me whether or not I can meet this goal. And so then I'm just going to do the thing. And so then I did the things, right? But doing that actually put my work out and more people were able to see it. And I met my agent by accident. She's awesome, Jennifer Loughran. She's the business. She's very good at her job and she's the business. So, but I met her at a conference. I didn't know she was an agent because I am ignorant. And so I was just chatting with her. She had on dope glasses. We were both waiting for the fruit salad. It was just a good conversation. We talked, we like hung out a little bit. And then this chick gets up on stage and does a presentation as an agent. I was like, oh, okay.
Probably for the best.
I mean, probably,
Would
right?
you have been any different had you known that she was an agent? Would that have added some pressure to you?
I probably wouldn't have talked to her because I wasn't interested in having an agent. And I wouldn't have wanted her to think I was trying to pitch her. And agents are constantly being pitched.
Yeah.
Like, let the other people be in the room pitching you. Girl, have your time. Like, that's probably why you came here. If you're an agent, you're probably trying to, scope people out, see who's cool, like who you want to talk to her later. So I probably wouldn't have talked to her at all.
Right.
Okay, to be fair. But I had already, and she's dope. So it was like, oh, my friend though, my new conference friend is an agent. Oh. So she and I did connect, and so then I did end up pitching her, and it just happened that the one that I was working on was this book. But before I had to stop and think. So am I willing to collaborate on this book? Because when you're going, the bigger the publisher, the more likely it is, or I guess it also depends on the editor, but the bigger the publisher, the more likely it is that it's gonna be collaborative at some level. Like they're gonna give you notes, there's gonna, whatever. And there are some stories that are so of my heart that I don't care what anybody else thinks would be better in the situation. I'd be like, oh, that's nice, I'm not doing it. So then I had to make sure that this was I had to really reflect on this one and be like, is this the kind of story that I would be willing to take those kinds of notes and feedback genuinely about? And it is. And honestly, my editor, who's Maggie Lehrman at Abrams Kids, she was amazing. She gave great notes. Not anything that changed the core of the story, which is good, right? But things that I certainly think made it better and more to market, right? Like my little rambling literary brain sometimes, would not have things that would be as core to market, but this one really very much is.
Was it hard for you to embrace that process?
No, actually, because I walked in with my eyes open, and I've also done it the other way. And I know that I can do it the other way at any time. I can do it. In fact, I am, because the last book in my Seeds of Magic series, which is a little girl finds a chrysalis in her backyard, but instead of incubating a butterfly, it incubates a dragon. And, she accidentally ushers in a new age of dragons. It's dope. Also happens in New Orleans. But she, the last book in that series comes out this year, and it's with a small press. And so then it mostly gets to be me, right? They give feedback, but they don't expect, with that press, they don't expect that I'm gonna take it all, right? And Maggie probably doesn't expect that I take it all. But I take a lot, because a lot of times I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. And that's a good feeling. It's more of a partnership, but still one where it's you need to know that you believe in the thing that you're giving them in the first place.
Yeah, I think that you are in a position that is in a really good place. Like, it's good to see that, you know, you got the agent when you wanted it, went for a big publishing contract when you wanted it, had the experience of doing things on your own because you wanted. So, I mean, there's a lot of agency in your publishing process, and I think that that is very commendable, and I think that a lot of us who are writing just love to hear it. Because you arrived when you wanted it, there's not that pressure of like, I need an agent, I want this book deal, I want this thing. So it's really nice that, you know, this is how your journey has kind of like happened. There are, I don't know about you, but I feel like children's literature has kind of like exploded in recent years. I feel like there's like tons of books and there's more access, and kids are just reading better things. There's tons of representation. What's your prediction? I don't know, what do you see in the future for writers like you, for books like yours?
Oh, okay. So,
At the same time,
no. I'm just trying to decide, again, novelist. So I'm trying to decide how far back can I go. So it's gonna be pretty far. So my favorite movie is Annie, the one with Eileen Quinn, like the sun will come out, like that. Okay, and I still to this day, I'm not saying my favorite movie was. My favorite movie is Annie. Okay. Now many years later, when I had my oldest, they did a revival, like a new version of the Annie movie, and it had like Ravagine in it and like whatever. Okay, so, and I brought my daughter to see this movie because I love Annie. There was no way that I was gonna love this movie more than Annie. It's literally my favorite movie, right? But like but when I tell you that in the opening montage, I cried silent tears to see this little black girl be Annie on the screen. Like I didn't even know I needed it because I already loved Annie. Like I already loved Annie. I didn't even know I needed it. So if I were growing up with the amount of selection that kids have right now, I don't even know, I would be an entirely different person. Like I don't even know how it would be. But here's another thing that I know, is that it is still not nearly enough. So it's about, I won't say the statistic that I think I know because maybe I'll be wrong, but it is not nearly as much as one thinks, because it is a smart move to put authors forward so that you can see the work, but also like people are still getting turned down a lot, and also there are just as many in quantity books that are being published each year that have white protagonists as the main characters as there have ever been, and some years more, but there are also more books that have like children of color in the front. And so I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful, but also there should be a ton more because people are still prone to pit them against each other, which doesn't happen when there's enough, right? Like when it's everywhere, you don't have to be like, oh, are you gonna like Danielle Clayton or Tomi Adeyemi? It's like, no, dude, that's two, you said two. So like, there's just like, we could both, and also maybe have more, please. Like it's kind of like that. So I'm hoping that we get there. I think that we probably are on the road to it. Some like announcements have been made recently. Kwame Mbelia is a new head for a Disney division of publishing. He did Tristan Strong series, which was one of the Rick Riordan Presents books series. And so he's doing that. We have packagers. I just mentioned Danielle Clayton, but she's an author. She also has a packaging company that's called Cake Creative. I think that is the right name. No, I'm 100% sure that's the right name, Cake Creative. And then there are just a bunch of other little like divisions of publishers that are trying to make sure that they have editors who are hiring editors who are people of color, so that they can connect with stories of other people of color. And that's not to say that that is 100% match, right? Like that my white editor totally acquired this book, right? But like that's like 100% match, but like it also kind of makes sense that like if you're having to make a gut guess about like what's gonna be good, what are people gonna love, like you're gonna rely on your lived experience, some of that, right? Like some of that and so then you just have a better chance the more diverse the publishing personnel is than just and the more bold people get with their indie publishing. I love indie publishing. I want you to publish well. Don't fast publish. I'm not pro anybody fast publishing, but I'm 100% pro removing the gatekeeper if you feel like this work is amazing and it's time for it to get out there and I don't want to have to ask anybody's permission. Like I'm pro that as well. So I'm hoping that in the next few years that we have both of those things coming together to just make a much wider landscape so that like everybody will be able to look through windows like the way that I could for Anna Pre-Kings, you know, so.
That was amazing. Thank you, Marty. Let's give it up for Marty.
Thanks, y'all. Well, inside of Talk with Writers.
If anyone has any questions, this would be a great time to ask them. Yeah.
Hi, Annell. Hi, Marty. One of the things that I love about Wild Sea Witch, which I read as a grown-ass woman,
Nice, big ups.
was that what it captured, we were talking about could it be set somewhere else? And I know that every place has potentially a palimpsest because the earth is old and we are just here for a season. But what Marty captures in this book that I admire is a palimpsest of both rural and urban Louisiana. That it is a place with secrets, with stories, almost like a dysfunctional family that has nonetheless got sparks of divinity and love in it. And
do you want to write copy for me? Are you, I mean, like that's, you know.
You know where I live, you know my email, girl. But I just want to tell adult readers in this room how seriously I take this book. It's a book that is about young people the way that Huckleberry Finn is about young people, but it is not only for young people.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thanks.
And I gotta go meet some people at the Hawaii who are waiting outside, but just buy her book because it's awesome.
Yeah, buy Marty's book. And oh yes.
I just had a question about
Sure.
writing for young adults. If you're writing for the modern age, how important is it to incorporate the modern world? I mean, is there moments you can leave out things? I mean, there's just so much going on in the world right now, and I mean, as an adult, you know how you talk about writing from your experience, but incorporating the world we live in now.
Right.
How do you blend those two? Because
So I'm gonna give you an answer that you're gonna hate. I'm like sorry in advance. But the truth is that you're the god of the story. You will pick and choose the things that serve your story,
okay.
and that's it. So like you don't have to be down to the minute with things in the story if it's not serving the story. But if it is, then you want that to be in there. But you wouldn't want to do, I'm going to call it lazy just for shorthand, but understand there's zero judgment because I'm lazy all the time, right? So you wouldn't want to do something, you would want to try not to do something that would be lazy, like being like, well, I'll just set it in the 90s because I already know all the 90s music, not because the story serves needs to be in the 90s. It's because I don't feel like knowing what they're listening to right now.
Yeah.
Like that's a different thing. But like if the piece is not serving it, I say chuck it because it's just gonna weigh the story down anyway.
Okay.
Does that?
I like it.
Okay. Okay, yay!
I'm currently writing something. I'm using my children as like gatekeepers for my story.
Best
Getting
ones.
advice from them.
If your kids are anything like my kids are so direct and mean. Like I didn't train them to like pull punches with me, and then I regret that when I pass them things to read because they get. But also, I'm like, if I can get past this one.
First readers?
Oh, always.
Oh,
yes.
that's amazing.
No, always,
That's
always,
amazing.
always. I knew that this book was good. I thought it was all right. But I knew this one was good when my now 17-year-old, who at that time was almost 16, busted into the bathroom while I was in the shower. Okay, life. And I thought it was an emergency because busted into the bathroom while I was in the shower.
Teenagers,
Okay.
everything is an emergency.
Crying.
Oh.
Everybody is being so mean to her. I'm like, why? Why is it being this way? I mean, this is what, and I was like, like, what just happened? Like, say what just happened in the story. And so she says, and they say, and then I'm like, okay, give it like 8 pages. Give it like 8 pages. and they're like, okay. So then I was like, oh. I mean, that was pain, but like, okay, yeah, no, it's pretty good.
I mean, it's the best audience for.
Yeah.
And they will be brutal and honest. They will,
Practice
they'll
like
let
the
you know.
last thing they learn, so that's good for this, right?
No, it's perfect, right? It's perfect. And then you still have to feed them anyway. So then it's like, you know, like go ahead and say whatever. It's not like I'm gonna not feed you now. So like, yeah.
Perfect audience.
With what you just said about the first story, how do you know, being great and wonderful and perfect audience and things like that, how do you deal with the stress and the pressure to get to the next book to make sure it's as full and fulfilling as the second one without just being overwhelmed and say, forget this guy, hold this book?
Okay, that is an excellent question. Normally for me, I'm not collaborating on stories. So normally, if I have a multi-book thing, I knew the end when I started the beginning. I actually know the end of this series, but there's so much in the middle that I had to we had to do a little back and forth on a little bit. And so that part is hard, because it's not just me who has to like it at this first level. Liking the world that you're in is important. If you don't like it anymore and you have a choice, you should definitely not keep writing in it. Like, you should do something else that's inspiring you, if you're asking my opinion on it. But coming up with more stories for this world is easy because it's kind of real in my head, you know, that delusion, right? Where you're like, oh no, we could follow a different person, or we could we could have done a lot of different things. But pinpointing which next thing to do did take some back and forth and discussion between me and my editor, and I think we landed in a place that we both like. But the next book is it's if you like this one, you'll like the next one too.
I have a question because this is a very much, I feel, a adult theme, but it's also very much a coming of age theme, but this idea of your aspired dream, so a TikTok, a YouTube channel, and then your actual dream, because if most of us figure out, you know, sometimes your actually achieved dream has to change sometimes every few years.
Yeah.
Right? Because life just sometimes just comes in and changes things. So I would just love to hear more about that, because I do feel that is universal no matter what season of life you're in.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with that, especially in the idea. I love, and I'm going to use this now, but I will credit you, that we're all always coming of age, right? Like, there's a new thing. If you're growing, then you're coming of age in a new thing, a new aspect of yourself, that kind of thing. I think that that aspire thing in here, it actually makes it easier in the middle grade, because I can make it more light. I can do it a little more light touch, the way that you would in some genre fiction, like some pop genre fiction, which means I think that with kids it makes it more effective lesson because it's a lighter touch in here. So obviously she gets exactly her wish fulfillment. Let me promise you how her YouTube blows up. But by the time her YouTube blows up, obviously that's not going to be the thing that is and it's not, she's not going to chuck the YouTube. Also, spoiler, it's not even a spoiler. She's not going to chuck the YouTube, right? She's going to keep her YouTube, because who would chuck their YouTube if it blew up? Nobody would do that. No one would do that. But it is definitely not the core thing that she thought was going to fix. So then she has to make some more growth steps, which makes her eligible for being a part of a series, because she's still got growth that has to do. Her real goal obviously wasn't just the YouTube channel, but I think that is like that's easier lesson for kids to get than for adults who are looking for it to be hammered or come in the form of a guru, to land down and pass the things. But that's just the that's the basic, that was it right there, right? Like, you're trying for a thing, but that thing is not actually you, right? That thing is growing you, and where are you gonna grow next? Maybe I'll catch it if you read it, if you read the book. Maybe you'll internalize it, but I hope that the kids definitely do.
I'm sure they will.
Can you see her in the future as an adult in an adult sequence?
You know, I have actually thought about that a little bit for this one, but more for the girl with the dragon one, right? Because I love a magic old lady. A magic old lady is my joint, right? Particularly if she can ride a dragon, we're like, I'm in, that's me. And so then I imagine that a lot, and I sneak them in. Like, whenever I can get a magic old lady, and I'm like, yes, here we go, slide one in right here. So then I do think about that a lot for that, and I probably will at some point write that out for this. This one has a mostly female cast. I didn't honestly do it on purpose, but it is a mostly female cast, like 99.9% female cast. And so then there are women of all different walks of life, all different ages, like all different socioeconomic categories, like in the stories. And so I kind of get to play out that wish fulfillment already, because there's other people who are at different stages of life in the thing. But with the girl with the dragon book, I'm like, magic old lady, future magic old lady, this is gonna happen. Yes.
First of all, congratulations again for this book. My question is, what makes you going? Like, what really pushed you to go after like 12 books, I think?
This is my 11th, 12 and 13 will be out in
What
2023.
really motivated? Because the writing process is very lonely, it's not easy, especially if you have a family. Second question. I think New Orleans Public School need to buy all your books. And,
Is that a question you want to just come stand on this side and like say, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but I think that book needs to be taught in schools, and they need just to buy all the books and start putting it in the curriculum, I think, for third, fourth grade. I think that would be great.
Oh, that's really kind. So
It's
thank
happening
you.
in some schools, and
Yeah.
the goal is that all the series continue to happen, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really awesome. I have a goal of having written 49 books for children that I love, and 12 and 13 will come out this year. I obviously, because I'm a human being, I hit walls. I hit things where I feel like I'm like, oh, everybody else got invited to this, but not me. Or like, I have moments, right? And when I have those moments, like I probably wallow for a little bit. I'm not a huge wallower. I'm honestly not. Like if I wallowed real hard, you probably would have to like find me in weeks, because so then I just don't let myself wallow too bad. But like when I am in that, the thing that pulls me out is 49. Like you haven't done it yet. So like, what are you gonna do? Quit? So like, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm not. I guess I won't quit me. All right, let's get up and try it again. So then that's, yeah.
49.
It's a perfect square. 50 is kind of a whack number because everybody else uses it. Yeah. So that's it. That's the whole thing. 49.
49. All right, everybody. Let's wish Marty a long journey to 49, and thank you for being here.
Thank